Hey, what's up guys, this is Vesper and it's time for part 2 of our Sakura guide. In this video we're going to go over her move list as well as her V system. And if you guys missed out on part 1 or you guys want to cut straight to the chase and look at the combo guides, you can check out the links for that in the video description below. So let's get started. First let's talk about Sakura's HADOKEN, so her projectile attack. Now this is your typical zoning tool, but keep in mind that although this does have a lot of utility, it's really weak as a zoning tool compared to other characters. So if we compare it directly to Ryu's Fireball, it's a lot slower startup, so it takes longer for the Fireball to come out, 3 frames slower, 17 frames startup. Also the recovery is quite huge, so it's really easy to get jumped in on as well if you keep throwing it out blindly, and it's -8 on block. This is something you don't want to do point blank even when you're ending your streams because you can be easily punished. Now the light version doesn't go full screen, but the medium version almost does, and the hard punch version goes completely full screen. Now you can also charge this projectile by holding down the punch button, and you'll see it causes a knockdown and it does 2 hits, just like her EX version. So it's almost like a free costing EX Fireball, right? And this is really useful since it does 2 hits because you can use it in Fireball Wars and you can eat the projectile and it can still continue forward. And of course the knockdown is also a huge benefit. And another cool thing is on block, this is actually +3. So if you happen to knock down your opponent or you have some kind of setup, it's still your turn right after. The only difficult part is how to get it to charge without getting blown up if your opponent jumps in on you. So most of the time you want to do it around full screen, and since it's pretty slow, it doesn't matter what strength you charge it with, it's the same. You can walk with you and use it to shield you as you advance towards the opponent. You cannot charge the EX version. One more interesting thing is that you can cancel the charge projectile into her V skill. So you hold it down and then right at the end you can go right into the V skill, which is interesting. So you can use this to cover your tracks when you do your V skill. We'll cover more of that near the end of this guide. Finally, you can also shoot an upwards projectile by going core circle forward and kick. This is more of a hard read anti-air because you're leaving yourself open, and also Sakura has a tell by looking upwards when she throws it. But if you get the opponent in the habit and you're zoning them for a bit, you can become unpredictable doing this. Also, you can get an extra reward because you can also charge this if you happen to land as an anti-air. Then you can land a hard punch DP right after for some extra damage too, or you can cancel that right into super. Alright, moving on to Sakura's Tatsus now. Let's start with the light kick version. So first off, her light kick version is -2 on block, which means it's relatively safe to just throw out. But if you happen to land it, you're actually +1 on hit, which can cause some pretty good scenarios. First off, you're really close after, and you can go for a throw. So you can do something like this, and then when your opponent gets scared of throws, you can start doing a shimmy. So you can do something like this. And then finally, since you're +1, you can actually just do a frame trap right after. So you can do something like crouching light punch into standing light kick. So I'll show what that would look like. Finally, if you happen to land a counter hit with the Tatsu in the first place, you'll be +3. So therefore, you can just combo right into a light from there. So something like this. Okay, let's talk about Sakura's medium kick version now. Now this is mainly used for combos because it's -6 on block, so it's really unsafe. Another thing is it's hard to combo into. You can't use something like a standing light kick won't combo into it, neither will a crouching medium kick combo into it. The main ways to combo into this is with a crouching hard punch or a standing hard punch. But the benefit of landing this is that it's actually +3 on hits, so you can land a crouching light punch after. So you can do something like this. So basically, you mainly want to use her medium Tatsu when you want to land a big combo actually from a jump in or when they're dizzy. So something like this. Now Sakura's hard kick Tatsu, it's very important to understand. First off, this is -2 on block. So just like the light kick version, it is relatively safe to throw out. Second off, when you do land it, once again, you're in those same 3 scenarios. Throw, or you can shimmy, or you can frame trap. But this time, instead of being +1 on hit, it's actually +2 on hit, which means you can throw out a medium punch right after, and if your opponent presses a button, he will get frame trapped. So you can do something like this. Hit, and then if they press a button, counter hit, back into it again. Medium, hard punch, back into hard Tatsu. And this basically throws them in for a loop, and if they block it, you're -2 on block anyways, and it's relatively safe. The main ways to combo into it is from a standing hard punch, or a counter hit medium punch into hard punch. It's also really important to know that the hard kick version goes over projectiles, and this is one of the main ways you deal with zoners. But the problem is that since it has a huge startup, you basically have to predetermine when they're going to throw the projectile, unless of course you're full screen. Finally, let's talk about the EX version. This is also -2 on block. So every single Tatsu is -2 on block, except for the medium kick version, which is -6. Important to know. So because it's safe on block, I usually prefer this as my shimmy tool. I'll go back hard punch into it because the risk is very low, as opposed to doing a projectile, which leaves me at -8, the charge projectile, which leaves me open in between, and of course a DP will just blow me up if the opponent blocks it. Another benefit is if you happen to land this, whether in a combo, it has good corner carry, and it actually has really good Oki as well. I'll cover Oki in a separate video. Another thing is it's really good to do in combos in the corner because you get a juggle follow-up, either from a light uppercut, for example, or you can even do an EX version of your uppercut as well. There's also an air version of the Tatsu. I mean, you can use it to maybe jump out of the corner and just make yourself unpredictable, but I haven't found too much use for it. The EX version keeps you on the spot, so maybe this might save you if someone happens to do an anti-air super or something like that and you need to save yourself. And then of course her jumping medium punch puts the opponent into a juggle state so you can combo into it using jumping medium punch, for example. Okay, let's talk about Sakura's DP now. So let's start with the light version. This is mostly used as an anti-air. It's got a 4-frame startup, which is really fast. This is something you want to use in a pinch, usually when you're recovering from something and you know you don't have too much time for the crouching hard punch, so use a light DP. I did say before in my video that it has invincibility frames. I was wrong on that. It actually just has a really, really good hitbox. Now for the medium punch DP, this is mostly used as a finisher, especially from lights. This is your go-to finisher, basically. Finally, we have the hard punch version, which covers a great deal of horizontal distance. This is mostly used as combo filler when you land your mediums or your heavy normals. It also gives the best Oki options as well, since you're really close afterwards, but once again we'll cover that in a separate video. Now for the EX version is invincible. You can use this as a decent anti-air for some extra damage, or you can use it as a reversal when you're getting up off the ground. Keep in mind that since it's invincible, you will get crush countered if the opponent happens to block it. One last thing I should note is that since it covers a good amount of horizontal distance, it's another tool you can use against zoners, since they'll just go right through because of the invincibility. Alright, let's move on to Sakura's V system now. Let's start with her V skill. So first off, if you use it raw, it makes her leap towards the opponent. Now, you can use this to go over projectiles, but keep in mind that this is very, very slow. And the opponent has more than enough time to swatch you out of the air if you do it blindly, or if they have a really fast recovering projectile, such as like Guile, for example, with Sonic Booms. They'll have enough time to hit you before you even reach them. So you don't want to use this too often. Now let's talk about the follow-ups. There's 3 different follow-ups. So let's start off with the punch follow-up. First thing you guys should know is that this is an overhead attack. Then after you land it, you can press punch up to 2 more times for a 3-hit juggle. Now, notice the opponent gets up way before I land, which isn't the best. So what you can do is you can delay your punches and try to time it so you hit as close to the ground as possible to make the situation just a little bit more favorable. But what I like to personally do is I just press punch twice, and basically I get a way better setup afterwards by just sacrificing a little bit of damage. You'll notice the Sakura lands way before Ryu, and then I can just go for a meaty, for example. Another thing to note is that even if your opponent happens to block this, as long as you hit it fairly low, you're pretty plus on block still, and you can continue the pressure. Alright, moving on to our kick follow-up now. This is pretty much a dive kick. Just keep in mind, guys, that this doesn't hit overhead, unlike her punch version, which does. Now, there is an extra reward if you happen to land it though, and that's being able to do a ground combo. So a pretty good bonus. Basically, you want to aim for the toes because that'll make you more plus, and you can do something like this, for example, land 2 mediums into a hard punch DP. Now, if the opponent is blocking, it's a little tougher because if you land it high, you're actually really minus, and the opponent can punish you. But if you can happen to land it at the toes, it can actually be up to +4, making it really safe and, you know, being able to still apply pressure. One last thing I should note about this is that the entire process is actually pretty slow. So the V skill is slow, and then she kind of does a little wind up before she kicks downwards. So you don't want to use this too much, use it sparingly. You basically want to mix it up when your opponent is used to you doing the punch follow-up, because it's really easy for your opponent to anti-air this. And finally, let's talk about the last follow-up, which is pressing throw during V-skill. When you're close to the opponent, Sakura will grab them and knock them down. Now, I personally like this follow-up because the whole process is just fast in general, and it kind of makes up for the slow speed of her V-skill. The only downside is that the opponent can actually crouch this to avoid it, and then Sakura's left open right in front of the opponent, and then yeah, it's bad news bears. So what I like to personally do is I use the charge fireball to cover me as I V-skill towards them and go for the grab, because naturally the opponent is going to want to stand because they're scared of the overhead follow-up. So if you do this kind of close, you could do something like you kind of tick throw into it. It's kind of cheap, and I use this a lot in my matches. Alright, let's talk about Sakura's V-triggers now. Let's start with her V-trigger 1. Now on V-trigger 1, she gets access to one additional new move by pressing hard punch and hard kick at the same time. So let's discuss this move first. This move is basically another meaty tool that's very similar to her down forward hard kick with a few differences. So the first difference is that this has a 21 frame startup, which means it's very slow startup. In fact, her forward medium kicker overhead also has a 21 frame startup, so you have an idea how slow it is. But it's +6 on hit, which means you can confirm a medium from it, so you can land bigger combos than her down forward hard kick. And another thing is it's active for 7 frames. So that means it's out for a really long time. So if you knock down the opponent, you can use it pretty early, and they'll basically just stand up into it because it's active for so damn long. Also, it's +2 on block, so it's really safe to use when they're waking up into it, even if they block it, and you can frame trap them with a standing medium punch. And basically, you can keep the pressure on them. Very similar to, once again, her down forward hard kick. Another thing is that this can neutralize projectiles. One-hit projectiles. It's not really that crazy of an anti-zoning tool because of the slow startup, but it's something to keep in mind. And you can also use this for some juggle combos as well. Let me show an example. Alright, let's talk about the main purpose of Sakura's V-Trigger 1, which is enhancing her projectiles. So what it does is it makes her fireballs do 2 hits as if it was the EX version, and it knocks down the opponent. You can also charge it and it'll do 3 hits and still knock down the opponent. You'll also notice that they float in the air for a little bit, and this actually allows an easy juggle follow-up, mainly with the medium punch DP and EX version DP. So V-Trigger 1 really enhances Sakura's neutral game. It makes her pokes a lot more dangerous, especially her crouching medium kick. Because if you land a far range crouching medium kick into her projectile, you basically get a free DP, which can also lead into a super. Now another really cool thing is her projectiles are now +1 on block, which means that going crouching medium kick to fireball is completely safe. In fact, you get to still apply pressure afterwards. It's still your turn. So there's absolutely no risk to doing this, and you can basically just start fishing crouching medium kicks and get a huge reward if you happen to land it. So let me show you guys a couple combo examples. I won't go too crazy because we got a combo video. If you land it close, you can go into a light tatsu first, into an EX uppercut. If you happen to land this in the corner, you get an even bigger reward. You can go right into the EX tatsu, and you get a juggle up that way. Even your crush counter combos are a little stronger as well. So at the end of the day, even though V-Trigger 1 is not as bursty as V-Trigger 2, you get a much stronger neutral game in general with the safe fireballs, and you also get an additional move which adds more utility. Alright, let's talk about Sakura's V-Trigger 2 now. What this does is it enhances her DP and her Tatsu. So keep in mind, while this is active, you can no longer do the EX versions of these moves, but these are better anyways. So first, your DP obviously does 2 reps and has a lot more horizontal range. It does really good damage, and you can use this as an anti-air if you want. Now keep in mind that since this is invincible like her EX version, she can also be crush countered if the opponent blocks this. Now the enhanced Tatsu is the main thing you're going to try to land, because it adds a lot of burst to her combos. You'll notice she does this big kick attack at the end. You can actually cancel this into her V skill. which then could juggle into either her punch follow-up or her kick follow-up. And most of the time you're going to use her kick follow-up because there's an easy juggle afterwards. So after that, you can go into her enhanced DP, and if you run out of V gauge, you can just go into her EX DP. From there, you can go into her super. So you can see this does a lot of damage in general compared to her V trigger 1. Now the downside to her enhanced Tatsu is that unlike her EX version, which is -2 on block, the enhanced Tatsu is -10. So this is very, very punishable. It's not something you can use blindly to make your string safe, like a crouching medium kick into it, like her V-Trigger 1 projectile. So instead, what I like to personally do is I buffer it from a standing light kick. So like we talked before in the previous guide where I buffer this into my DP, instead I'll buffer it into her V-Trigger, to her Tatsu basically, because it does combo from her standing light kick, and if the opponent happens to walk in range of your standing light kick, you'll get a massive reward for it. So at the end of the day, Sakura's V-Trigger 2 is a lot more burstier and does a lot more damage, and because of that, it has a lot more comeback factor. But at the same time, it's also riskier because her Tatsu is very minus on block, and if you're not landing big hits, you're not going to benefit much from her V-Trigger 2 in the first place. So her V-Trigger 1 is more for neutral, it's more consistent, but does less damage and less comeback factor overall. So choose whatever V-Trigger suits your playstyle. So let's wrap up this video, guys. That's the end of part 2 of my Sakura guide. In part 3, we'll be covering her general game plan and basically how to play her in a match. So definitely look forward to that. Also, please subscribe to the channel, guys. Of course, we got a ton of more guides we'll be working on in the future. And also like the video, please. It really helps out. So until then, guys, take care.